All right, we got the doozy of a trade to talk about. 6 players involved in a 2-team trade between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is the trade involving Jake Guetzel. Jake Guetzel, premier top line winger. 50 games played this year, 22 goals, 30 assists, 52 points. He's a +9 on a below the playoff team. He's had two 40-goal seasons, right? He's had 3 seasons where he's been at or above a point per game, right? So you play 82 games, you have 82 or more points. Just an example. He's also a point per game kind of guy in the playoffs as well. 58 games played, 58 points in the playoffs. So pretty reliable, pretty steady, pretty even keel when it comes to performance in the regular season and playoffs. That's good. The 2022 season was his career year, was his best season. In 76 games, he had 40 goals, 44 assists, 84 points, and he was a +13. He hit 40 goals and a +13 one other time in his career a couple years earlier, but the assists weren't quite there for that year. That was his other 40-goal season. Never exceeded 40 goals, but he's hit 40 goals twice, which is still impressive. So Jake Guetzel should slot right into that top 6. This is a Carolina Hurricanes team that is a defensive first team, but needs to kind of bolster their offense a bit, and Jake Guetzel should slot in real nice, especially in that top 6. He'll probably play on the first line. Ty Smith is also acquired. He was a former 17th overall first-round pick in 2018. He's a left shot, right shot defenseman, can play on both sides. He's still only 23. I don't know if I just said that. In the AHL this year with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins or whatever, 51 games played, 9 goals, 23 assists, 32 points. He's a -9 with 24 penalty minutes. Ty Smith has all the potential in the world, but he is an offensive defenseman, and his defensive game hasn't quite been at an NHL level. He's played a few seasons in the NHL. I think this is his second season in the AHL. Trying to work on that defensive aspect of his game, but I don't necessarily think it's coming along as well as the team would like. And his penalty minutes is also a bit of an issue too. He takes a lot of minor penalties, and I'm not quite sure if that's getting caught chasing in his own zone, or I'm not entirely sure. The few seasons we saw him play, he was still very young and on a New Jersey Devil team that it wasn't great anyway. So there are defensive deficiencies with Ty Smith. There is potential there, though. If he figures out that aspect of his game, stops taking as many minor penalties as he does, this could be a solid NHL caliber defenseman in the future. But we'll see. We're kind of getting at that point where he needs to start making strides. And if he doesn't, he'll probably be an AHL, maybe a 7th depth defenseman at best. So those are 2 pretty significant moves right there, 2 significant players. What do the Penguins get in return? Well, we know Kyle Dubas. We know he was the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now he's the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins, or the interim general manager. I think he got a promotion. He loves Michael Bunting. Michael Bunting, no surprise, goes to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Michael Bunting in 60 games played this year, 13 goals, 23 assists, 36 points. He's a -15 and 55 penalty minutes. Michael Bunting is one of those guys where you know he's going to maybe make a dive or something. And he's cleaned up his game slightly in Carolina. I wouldn't say it's, butterflies and rainbows with Michael Bunting in Carolina. But, it's Rod Brindamore, the coach of the Hurricanes, doesn't really put up with that as much as Sheldon Keefe did in Toronto. So, Bunting, solid player, has spent a lot of time in that top 6. Also spent some time in on that third line role. He's one of those guys that can slot in anywhere on your lineup, can play power play minutes if you need him to. Defense, it depends on the night. Some days he'll make a good defensive play, but in general, he's an offensively first person player. So Michael Bunting. They also get 3 pretty decent prospects. Vasily Ponomarov. Oh my goodness, Ponomarov. He's a 21-year-old center. He's a former 2020 second round pick. In the AHL this year, 39 games played, 8 goals, 21 assists, 29 points. He's a -15. So overall, that's not too bad. It's a decent pickup, decent prospect. He's young. Um, they also get Cruz Lucius. He's a 19-year-old right winger playing in the University of Wisconsin. 32 games played, 12 goals, 19 assists, 31 points. He's a +2 on a Wisconsin team that was not good at the beginning of the season. I think they've started to find their stride. I haven't checked the standings as of late. But as a 19-year-old playing collegiate hockey, putting up nearly a point per game it's impressive. You see these guys like Fantilli and Celebrini and even Johnny Gaudreau putting up these crazy stats in collegiate hockey. That's not normal. It's really not normal, especially from an 18, 19-year-old. That's when you know these kids are really special. But putting up a point per game at the age of 19 at that level of hockey is very impressive. So you got to give. I think this is a very good pick. I think he was a former 4th round pick. So not a bad pickup, I think, for the Penguins as well. They also get Ville Kovunen, 20-year-old right winger. He's playing in Liga as a 20-year-old, and he has in 57 games he has 21 goals, 34 assists, 55 points. He's a +6. He was a 2nd-round pick in 2021. Those are impressive stats for a player playing professional ice hockey in a respectable and competitive league. This kid probably is going to be a good NHL player when should he choose to come over to the NHL. I think these 3 prospects are pretty solid and all project to be in an NHL roster in the next couple of years at most. We'll see what happens with some of these guys, right? If Ville comes over from Liga, let's see, playing in Finland. If Cruz Lucius decides to, stop playing college hockey and come to the NHL, if Ponomarov gets a promotion to the NHL, right? I'm not quite sure about that -15. I haven't looked too much into that, whether he's playing on a good team or not, right? So defense might need to be something he works on, which delays his NHL debut, or his defense is probably fine. I don't really know. So that's a question I'll have. They also get a 2024 2nd-round pick. So no first-round picks and no first-round pick prospects in this either, which is crazy. But they also get 3 good prospects. 2024 2nd-round pick. It's Philadelphia's 2nd-round pick. So, we'll see. Philly should make the playoffs. So we're talking about maybe a second-round pick, depending on how well Philly does in the playoffs. But this becomes Carolina's 1st-round pick. Should the Carolina Hurricanes win the Eastern Conference and just get to the Stanley Cup? They don't have to win the Stanley Cup Finals. They just have to get to the Stanley Cup Finals, and that becomes the 1st-round pick, which becomes a much more valuable pick. They also get a 2024 5th-round pick, and this is a bit odd. They only get this pick if Carolina wins the Stanley Cup. So I don't know. That's kind of a weird one, but whatever. It is what it is. You want picks, you never know, right? Cruz Lucius, 19 years old, came out of the 4th round. Should be a pretty solid NHLer in the near future, right? So overall, Jake Guetzel, that's the big fish. That's the fish not every team, but most teams were looking to obtain, right? We saw Vancouver bow out because the asking price was too high for Jake Guetzel. They also get Ty Smith, who's still a young 1st-round defenseman. In exchange for 3 pretty solid prospects, you get an NHL player who can play middle 6 minutes. We'll see where he slots in. Not sure if he'll slot in on a line with Sidney Crosby. They've had some beef in the day. Going back to, what was that, last 2 years ago, maybe? Michael Bunting was doing some diving, and Sidney Crosby was not happy about that and let it be known, which I respect. Not the biggest Sidney Crosby fan, but there are aspects to his game where it's just undeniable respect. So overall, I do think the Penguins did pretty well. This doesn't help them this year. This might not even help them next year, but it gets them younger, it gets them into a bit of a retool, and it gets them competitive sooner rather than later without going into a full-blown rebuild. And for a guy of Jake Guetzel, which you're not only going to have to pay a decent contract to, I think I'm projecting between $8 and $9 million, 8.5 kind of being that sweet spot, which give and take, if you get a guy like Michael Bunting to replace 80% of his production at half the cost, That's good cap management. So I don't mind that. But yeah, you're also not just selling him off for picks and picks. And Jake Guentzel might not have wanted to re-sign in Pittsburgh anyway. It's an older team that's missed the playoff or missing the playoffs this year. Not a whole lot of prospects of improving. Not a whole lot of prospects coming up into the organization to contribute to help make a playoff push. Right. So it's understandable that Jake Guentzel maybe doesn't want to re-sign his contract in Pittsburgh. I don't know what happens behind the scenes. I have no inside info. So take this all with a grain of salt. But overall, I think this is it's a good trade. This helps the Hurricanes win now, and really helps them push a little closer to a Stanley Cup final. They need some help in the playoffs. Jake Guentzel is a solid playoff performer. They need offensive production in the playoffs. Their defense is okay, for the most part, right? You get depth defense as well, solid. So this is purely playoff building. Hopefully they sign an extension for Jake Guentzel, considering how much they gave up. But overall, I think the Penguins did pretty well. I'm sure I'll be wearing my Carolina Hurricanes jersey in the near future, but I don't really get an excuse anymore to wear the Pittsburgh Penguins jersey, so I wore this. I also like what they got. It seems underwhelming on the surface. What was Michael Bunting? A 4th round pick, I think? 4th round pick, 2nd round pick, 4th round pick, 2nd round pick, 2nd round pick, 5th round pick, right? So nothing overly exciting. But when you kind of dig deeper into it, it's a pretty solid haul for a guy like Jake Guentzel. And Ty Smith, who probably wants more of a shot to play at the NHL. So that's the Jake Guentzel deal in a nutshell. If you have a winner or a loser, let me know. I don't really think there is a loser in this deal. I think it's a solid deal for both sides. We obviously need to see how these prospects will pan out at the NHL level, right? If somebody like Kovanen comes in and starts putting up, 90, 100 points, we could probably say the Pittsburgh Penguins won this deal. They get an NHL player now and a player that might be performing at a rate better than Jake Guentzel did, but it's too soon to tell, and Kovanen may not even come over to the NHL and sign. So we'll see. This is one of those trades that we'll reevaluate in a couple of years. I'm not sure if I'll remember on this channel. I'd like to. So please feel free to remind me in a couple of years if you're like, hey, what happened to that deal? We'll reevaluate then. But for now, I think it's a solid deal for both sides. That's all I got. I think we got another trade to talk about. We got 2 more trades to talk about. Nope, just one, and it's a decent one. So that's all for now. Take care, all right?